Graph y equals negative x squared minus 7x minus 5. The first thing we need to do when graphing in a quadratic equation in standard form is to find the axis symmetry. The formula for finding the axis symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. Let's substitute our values and simplify. The axis symmetry is negative 3.5. For my domain, notice I skipped negative 3 and negative 4. Negative 2 and negative 5 are both equal distance from the axis of symmetry, which is 1.5 units away. Negative 1 and negative 6 are 2.5 units away from the axis of symmetry, and 0 and negative 7 are 3.5 units away. So therefore, the left-hand side will have the same range values as the right-hand side. So let's substitute some values in. Let's find the vertex. So our vertex is negative 3.5, comma 7.25. We can substitute either negative 2 or negative 5. I'm choosing negative 2. And that will give me the output for negative 2 and negative 5. Let's substitute negative 1 or negative 6. I'm choosing negative 1. And I'm definitely choosing 0. Negative 5 and negative 5. Now we can plot our points. Notice that negative 3.5 is between negative 3 and negative 4. So it's right smack in the middle. 7.25, this is 7, so it's slightly higher. This is an estimation, so therefore it doesn't have to be exact, but this is a good place. Maybe a little bit higher would work, but it should be around this location. In the middle and a little bit higher than the 7. The next points are integer points, so therefore right there, and right there. And then we'll just connect our dots. If I wanted to graph the other 2 points, they would line up right here and right here, and that doesn't really help me that much with graphing it. It might make me round out, so remember the shape of a quadratic equation is a parabola. It's U, so it's rounded. We don't have to have that sharp edge like the absolute value one, so those closer ones will make sure you round it out. But as long as you know that the shape of a parabola is a U shape, you really don't need to have those 2 points that are so close. So the other thing to notice is that we went from positive to negative. Anytime you're going positive and you're going closer and closer to 0, you should continue until you get to negative. Same thing if you started negative and you see you're getting closer and closer to 0, continue until you go positive or you reach 0. I know approximately between what 2 integers this line goes. This line crosses the x-axis. So it crosses the x-axis between negative 1 and 0. And it crosses the x-axis here between negative 7 and negative 6. Next do now question is squaring a binomial. This is mental math and we should do it like so. We should know that x minus 5 squared is x squared minus 10x plus 25. If we want to show work, we could expand, take the first term in the first binomial and multiply it by the entire second binomial. Take the second term with the sign, so minus 5, and multiply by the entire second binomial. Distribute and combine like terms. Alright. Same thing here. We should know that 3x plus 7 squared is 9x squared plus 42x plus 49. If we needed to show work, we would expand, take the first term in the first binomial and multiply by entire second binomial, take the second term with the sign, so plus 7, in the first binomial and multiply by the entire second binomial. Distribute. And since the middle terms are like terms, combine those like terms. All right, so how do we do it in our heads? So the way you look at it is mental math. We take that first term and we square it. We take the first and the second term and multiply them and double it. Then we take that second term and square it. And that's how it looks. So again, How do we do it? We take the first term and square it. First term times the second term and double it. And then the second term and square it. All right. And the two numbers I have circled always have to be positive, because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is a positive. Another method, which I'm not really fond of, is called FOIL. And I'm not talking about this FOIL, I'm talking about here. First, outers, inners, last. It works just like the distributive property, but the distributive property will always work for all cases. FOIL only works for a binomial times a binomial, so it wouldn't work for a binomial times the trinomial, or a trinomial times the binomial. So when we go first, it would look something like so. Outers, inners, and then last. Combine like terms, and we are done. All right. This next one was solving by factoring. Please remember that when we solve by factoring, we're going to take the leading coefficient times the constant. What two numbers multiply to give us 30 but add to give us 17? That would be 2 and 15. So 2x plus 15x is a positive 17x. So we're just rewriting 17. So again, 2x plus 15x is this positive 17x. Bring down the 6. So this first equation, this second equation are the equivalent equations, because 5x squared, 17x, 2x plus 15x is 17x, plus 6 equals 0, 0. Now I can factor out the first two terms. I can factor out an x. Out of the second two terms, I can factor out a plus 3. So remember, we're going to factor out a plus or a minus. Since the first and second term now both have an x plus 2 as a factor, I can factor out that common factor, which is 5x plus 2. That leaves us with 5x plus 2 times x plus 3. Now to solve this, we can use the zero product property. 5x plus 2 is equal to 0, and solve. And x plus 3 is equal to 0, and solve. So our answers are -3 or -2/5. When we're factoring perfect square trinomials are in the form of a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. When you're factoring out, you can have it factored as a plus b times a plus b, or we can write it as simply a plus b squared. Same thing works when we have a minus, but again, notice that this will always be positive. When we take a look at this one, when we're factoring, remember this is a perfect square trinomial, so it's x minus 7 squared. How do I know this is a perfect square trinomial? Well, one way is using mental math. We take half of the middle term, that's 7x, and we take the square root of the first term, and then times the square root of the second term. So that would be 1x times 7, which is 7x. Since they match up, I know it's a perfect square trinomial, hence my answer is x minus 7 squared. With this one, 4 times 25 is 100, so is 2x plus 5 squared. If we wanted to check to make sure it was a perfect square, we could go 20x divided by 2 is 10x, and then the square root of 4x squared, and the square root of 25, that would be 2x times 5, which is 10x. Since they match up, we know our answer when we factor is 2x plus 5 squared.